Welcome back to Business Week here on Arise News. I am joined now by Eizu Uwaoma, founder and MD, Exavian consultant, to review some of our top stories in more details. I want to say thank you very much for joining us today here on Newsday, and I beg your pardon, on Arise News. Now, let's get started. I started off with the outage of AWS. What does this AWS outage reveal about global dependence on cloud infrastructure and digital resilience?
Well, I as an end user, I witnessed that myself a few days ago. Over $1 billion was lost globally for just a few hours of the system being down. And one of the fundamentals of that is, of course, surveillance, security went down, payment platform went down, websites went down. But it reminds us that we're living 20th century again when America controlled the energy sector. You know, the new energy is data now, right? Three biggest players in cloud computing is AWS, Google Cloud, and of course, Azure, right? Microsoft Azure. And one of the things you get to realize is that they control over 33% of the total market size. That's huge in itself. As a matter of fact, AWS alone controls 31%, while the rest of them share it. And so that's a real issue. Fundamentally, what it shows us is that the world is too dependent on just three companies. So we're almost moving towards an oligopolistic system, just the same way it was in the 20th century when the likes of ExxonMobil, Chevron controlled oil and gas, and you had a lot of oil wars. So I think that is very sad in itself. We hope that it does happen again. I personally thought it was a malicious attack, but we got to find out that it was an internal DNS error. So I think that's really sad in itself, but we hope that the world stands up and they can give us more alternatives, in my own opinion, to cloud computing and data storage. If AWS controls over 30% of the entire internet in terms of storage, security, and surveillance, it might interest you to know that the whole of Apple, there are 1 billion phones on, all of that cloud storage is stored on AWS. So you can understand how powerful a system, one country, and one brand can be. So literally, America is still on top of that.
First mover's advantage. There's a huge role in some of those things.
Well, actually true, but we have alternatives. I mean, China, Japan, and all of that. It happened in the 20th century, but then you had the Japanese invasion of American systems. I mean, Ford gave us assembly line and gave us automobiles, but beyond that, you saw the likes of Toyota and Honda come to take over that automobile market in the 80s and the 90s. So we're hoping to see more countries step up. One country and one company should not have that amount of power in terms of data, in my own opinion. But well done, we're good, it's back up, and we hope it doesn't happen again.
Let's go to Somalia right now. And of course, there have been talks about the US aid funding cuts and how it disrupted economic stability and development outlook. My own question to you. With the foreknowledge that this was going to happen, because President Donald Trump has been in office for a minute right now.
Yeah.
And he had said this is what we're going to do with external funding. Shouldn't we have braced up for more of the impact we're seeing? Because this is almost ridiculous to hear countries talking like this, that without fundings from international donors and from international partners, they cannot stay afloat.
You know, it's interesting that we're talking about Somalia, but it's a metaphor for the whole of Africa. You see, independence is not giving, it's not donated, it's earned. And whoever you give the power to feed you, you also give the power to starve you. I really like the fact that the USAID cut happened, because it gives us the opportunity to reinvent ourselves as Africans. Look at Somalia, 40% of their GDP is dependent on aid, right? Infrastructural aid and financial aid. That doesn't make any sense for any country. Nigeria alone had $600 million donated by USAID to our health sector alone. That's over 30% of our entire budget for health, right? So I like the fact that necessity is the father of invention. It's happened, and you're right, they should have been proactive about it. We need an Africa. Africa doesn't need more aids. We don't even need people giving us handouts, in my own opinion, right? We need to move from dependency to independence and then interdependence. And at that point, it starts to make a lot more sense. So Somalia is in a huge crisis for this. When this happened, it affected all African countries, but Somalia is hit the most. But in the end, Africa and Nigeria also was hit. And I hope that they reinvent. I like the rebound by Nigerian government.
My question to this is, it's almost like these governments will remain reactive because they will only switch what I call aid partners, one aid partner for the other. Because with the likes of Russia and some other influential backers coming back in, it's an opportunity. It's almost like an open door, because it seems like the governments don't want to think for themselves.
Well, we hope that that doesn't happen, but what you said is likely to happen, and that's sad if it happens. You know, you're either on the table or you're on the menu in negotiation, and if you're on the table, you're the one that they're eating. If you're on the menu, you're the one that is. If you're on the table, you're the one that's eating, and if you're on the menu, you're the one that is eating. Africa for so long has been on the table while they shared the cake, right? So I hope that that doesn't happen, but that's the real issue, my own opinion.
All right, so let's talk about the expansion of the Dangote refinery, 1.4 million barrels per day. And my own question is this: how does it? Because people look at the outlook and say, how does it affect the Nigerian economy? No.
Yeah.
But my own question has to be: how does it affect the average Nigerian on the street who are hoping that this Hail Mary, which is the Dangote refinery, is going to help reduce or crash down the prices of petroleum products here in Nigeria?
First of all, from 650,000
yes.
barrel per day to 1.4, that's over double, and that's quite ambitious. Shout out to him. He's paved the way for ambitious thinking, but that's where it ends. First thing first, let's look at it from the back to the front. From the back would be, how would you raise money to do that? I mean, don't forget, valuation is not actual cash, but good thing is he's trying to sell off part of the equity and get partners that can do that. That's really good. My challenge also is, does Nigerian domestic capacity in terms of consumption, do we have the capacity to consume 1.4 million barrel per day? That's all. As he's looking at cross-border alliances, that's where people like federal government has to come. Good thing is that it's offered if the federal government wants to take more equity and stakes in it. But to your question, which is very important, how does it affect the average Nigerian? Good news, I think it does, because about the time he's doubling, and that would make him officially the biggest refinery in the world. But the good news about that is there's going to now be excess supply. And don't forget, on the other end, there's so many small refineries popping up. I mean, Boa is building his own in Akwa Ibom. I still spoke to a client who's building one in Edo State. So you know what happens with demand and supply. When there's a large inflow of supply, of course, the price will crash. So that, here you go. You have the answers to your question. We hope that it brings down the price.
So we are hopeful.
Yes, by supply chain and value chain. I like the fact that there's expansion in the supply chain. He's trying to draw closer to supplying petrol to our households, right, with all of the tankers and all of that. So that's pretty good, in my own opinion. I think it's good news for Nigeria at the end. A win for Dangote would always be a win for Nigeria. The truth about it is that we're in a place, in a country where we need unicorns. The bigger the unicorns, the better for us, in my own opinion.
All right. Okay. Away from that, let's talk a little bit about fashion. And I don't know if Instagram and probably social media has anything to do with Gucci right now, because at the moment there's a sharp improvement in the Gucci stocks. And if you look at it, how is it shaping investors' confidence in Kering's long-term strategy?
Yeah, I'm so sentimental about this because I'm a huge fan of LVMH, Kering, and Hermes. These are the three biggest brands, luxury brands in the world. And if you look at who Kering is going head-to-head with, you see LVMH. The poster boy for Kering is Gucci.
Yeah.
Right. And if you look at what's happened in the last 3-4 years, they've had a dip in everything, their growth rate, their valuation, their stock, and all that. But in the last 3 months, they've seen a spike and a good surge, positive surge. But there's a trigger for it. That trigger is what happens in football when you have a new coach and then there's a new substitute, sort of, right? So the new CEO comes a lot of energy. Don't forget, he had done the revolution in Renault, right? He invented and trademarked the word called renovation. So we're hoping that that's one of the spikes. And of course, Gucci is the poster boy. And what talk about Instagram is pretty good because I feel like they've sort of watered down the brand, Gucci everything, right? So it's really hard to find the original and the fake. But one thing I'm hoping to see them do is consider what their core is. Their core is in fashion, but they've done a lot of things beyond fashion. But now we're seeing them backward integrate. For example, they're trying to sell off L'Oreal, which is one of the biggest cosmetic brands in the world, for about $4 billion. If that happens, right, then we're hoping that they'll refocus. So good news for people who want to buy stocks. This is the best time to buy your Kering stock.
Kering stock, okay. All right, so before we end it, let's talk about Nigeria's favorite staple. Whether Ghana or Nigerian jollof rice is better, I don't know. Personally, I don't care, but one thing is certain. This is looking like some good news, that 3.17% drop in the cost of cooking jollof rice. All right, talk to us about food price relief here in Nigeria, the economy, and are the good times back?
It's quite a sarcastic illustration using jollof rice. What they really talk about is macroeconomics and consumer price index.
Yes.
Literally, there's been a fall, and that's good. Consumer price index, with all the complexities, is just simply puts how expensive or how cheap things are going per basket of food, right? So the good news about it is, yes, there's been a drop. That means the average pot of jollof rice that was 27,000 naira now, probably will cook it at 24, 25. But let's not forget that on a lighter note, when you say jollof rice price has dropped, I need to ask, is it with meat or without meat? right?
Big question.
And what that
Big
means,
question.
because don't forget there's been a surge in protein,
Yes.
right? And also the three main ingredients you need to cook a good jollof rice is rice itself, right? Vegetable oil and meat,
Yes.
right? There's been a drop in vegetable oil. There's been a rise in meat. So it's a rebased system. It's a macroeconomics convention, but it gives an idea to say that maybe the CBN will be considering, right, readjusting our interest rate. That's most likely going to happen. For the employers, they're saying, okay, maybe this is not the time to increase salary because look like price of things are coming down, right? And of course, for the end user and the everyday Nigerian, it really means that clearly, Tinubu's magic just might be working. Very infinitesimal, very not noticeable, but the truth about it is we're not getting worse as a country, right? We don't know whether we're getting better, but like they say, stagnant water stinks, and we hope that we're not stagnant.
All right, Eizu, I'll be getting a plate of jollof rice, I hope. Probably the 5,000 will get me more today than it did yesterday. I want to say thank you very much for joining us here on Business Week.